Hello everyone, welcome back to the session. So, in today's class, we are going to discuss about the long answer questions, but in the second year. Okay, so in the last four classes, we have discussed about this long answer questions, and we have completed the first year. Okay, so we are going to start the long answer questions in the second year. After finishing all the long answer questions, okay, we'll revise it once, and after that we are followed by short answer questions and very short answer questions. Okay, so in today's class, this is the fifth day of the class in our target 60 series. So in today we are going to discuss about this long answer question in the body fluids and circulation. Okay, first question will be the describe the structure of heart of man with the help of the NEET labeled diagram. So they have the demand of the question will be the structure of the heart of man. Okay, we are going to discuss the structure of the heart, and also there is a necessary of this diagram. Okay, so structure of human heart and its general features. As I always insist you to give a proper subheading. Okay, so that is mandatory. And the human heart is mesodermal in origin. Okay, so whenever the gastrulation process, formation of three germinal layers is called as a gastrulation process. Three germinal layers in the sense outer layer, that is ectoderm, and the middle layer mesoderm, and the inner layer endoderm. Okay, so in that case human heart is a mesodermal in origin. Okay, and we know that human heart is four chambered heart. It is muscular pulsating organ. It is nothing but a pumping organ. Okay, so the size of the human heart will be the clenched fist, which means if you are close or fist, so this is the size of the human heart. Okay, so it is located in the mediastinum. Okay, so this is an important keyword. Okay, you should not miss this keyword. It is located in the mediastinum, thoracic cavity between the lungs. So what is the name of the cavity present where the heart is present? So that is thoracic cavity. Okay, that is present between the lungs. What exactly the name of the place where the heart is exactly present, that is exactly located, is mediastinum. Okay, with its apex slightly turned to the left. Okay, so we can't say the exact position of heart will be in the middle. Okay, it is not in the exact middle, but it is slightly to the left. Okay, so heart functions as the pump of the circulatory system, maintaining the unidirectional flow of the blood. Okay, see, heart functions as the pumping organ. Okay, so in the circulatory system, heart is one of the organ coming under the system. So we know that a group of cells, we are calling them as a tissue. Group of tissue is called as an organ, and group of organ is called as an organ system. Okay, heart is an organ. It is coming under which system? Circulatory system. So what are all the other organs under the circulatory system in the sense? So that is nothing but the blood vessels, okay, capillaries and heart. Okay, so all these are coming under the circulatory system. Okay, so that is the one maintaining the unidirectional flow of blood, how the blood is getting flow. We are going to discuss all these things. Okay, so covering of the heart, how the heart is getting covered, with which membrane? So that covering is called as a pericardium. Okay, so heart is covered by a double wall membrane, which is called as a pericardium. So in this pericardium we can divide it into outer layer and inner layer. Okay, so this outer layer is the fibrous outer layer, we are calling them as the fibrous pericardium, so which is very tough. Okay, serous pericardium, it is an inner layer. Okay, so it is an inner layer. Further, it is a double layer. So what we have discussed, so this is the heart, consider this is a heart, and this is covered by a pericardium. Okay, so this is an outer layer and this is an inner layer. So that's outer pericardium, we are calling them as the fibrous pericardium, and the inner pericardium we are calling them as the serous pericardium. Again, this in serous pericardium is a double layer. Okay, so parietal layer and visceral layer. So this is also an important thing. Okay, so the parietal layer is fused with the fibrous pericardium. So we know that. So the serous pericardium will be has two layers, one is parietal layer and visceral layer. This parietal layer is fused with which layer? That's what an outer layer which is called as a fibrous pericardium. Okay, so now visceral layer which is called as an epicardium, this adheres to the heart surface. So this makes the heart surface. Now between these two layers lies the pericardial cavity, which is filled with the pericardial fluid. Okay, so always there will be the two membrane. Between these two membrane, definitely there will be the fluid. What is the point of having the fluid between the two membranes? Is only because to avoid the friction, okay, during the heartbeats. Okay, so during the heart pumping action of the heart, they should not experience any of the friction. So that is why, to avoid those friction, these two between these two layers there is a fluid which is called as a pericardial fluid in case of heart. Now, what will be the layers of the heart wall? Okay, so in the heart wall, we are having the layers. So the outer layer, which is called as an epicardium, middle layer, which is called as a myocardium, and the inner layer, which is called as an endocardium. Okay, so epicardium, outermost layer. Okay, so this is an outermost layer, and this is called as a visceral pericardium. And myocardium is middle, which is thick muscular layer. See, this is made up of a thick muscular layer, and this muscle is nothing but a cardiac muscle, and this cardiac muscle is present only in case of heart. Okay, so this is the one. What is the point of having? See, the unique feature of this cardiac muscle, they are responsible for this contraction. Okay, so the pumping action of the heart is mainly due to the contraction of this cardiac muscles, right? Now, endocardium, the innermost thin endocardial lining continues with the blood vessels and the valves. So, all the blood vessels and the valves is getting connected with this innermost layer, that is endocardium. Okay. Now, how the external structure? Okay, so consider this is a heart. Okay, this is a heart, and this is a okay, so this is a right atrium. Okay, so this is the left atrium, this is the right ventricle, this is the left ventricle. Okay, so between these two chambers we are having a wall which is called as a tricuspid wall, and between these two chambers we are having a wall which is called as a bicuspid wall, right? We are in human heart, we are having four chambers. So the heart having the four chambers, two atria and two ventricles. Two atria are the upper small chambers, and the ventricles are the lower larger chambers, right? Now the atria and ventricles are separated externally by the coronary sulcus, arterioventricular groove. See, the upper structure is called as a see, this is the upper structure is called as an atrium. Okay, so this upper chamber is called as an atrium, and the lower chamber is called as a ventricle. Okay, so both these two chambers separated externally by the structure which is called as a coronary sulcus, and we are calling that particular structure as an arterioventricular groove, or we can say arterioventricular septum. Okay, so each atrium bears a pouch like auricular appendage. Okay, so each atrium, which is nothing but this right atrium and the left atrium, they are having a pouch like auricular appendage. The ventricle are separated externally by the interventricular sulci. Okay, so the ventricles are separated, these two ventricles are separated by the interventricular sulci. Okay, so these are all the structure, external structure. And what about the internal structure? How the internal structure will be? What will be the speciality of this internal structure? See, so this atrium, we know that atrium, in the atrium we are having the right atrium. So this right atrium receives the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so this is an important point. Okay, so the right atrium is receiving the deoxygenated blood from the body via the superior and inferior vena cava. So in the picture I have I have mentioned two veins. Okay, so superior and the inferior vena cava. Okay, so the superior vena cava is also called as the precaval, and the inferior is called as the postcaval. Right, see, the right atrium and the left atrium is receiving the blood from the body via the superior and the inferior vena cava. Okay, so the superior vena cava is called as a postcaval, and the inferior vena cava is called as superior is precaval and inferior is the postcaval vena cava. So anyhow, this atrium receiving the deoxygenated blood. Now, it also receives blood from the myocardium via the coronary sinus. Okay, see, they are receiving the blood from the myocardium. This is nothing but a middle wall. Okay, via the coronary sinus. Opening guarded by the valve, sebaceous wall. So there is another wall which is called as a sebaceous wall. We are going to see what is the other name of this sebaceous. Okay, see, the opening of the inferior vena cava is partly guarded by the eustachian wall, functional in the fetus. See, this eustachian wall, it is functional only in the fetus stage. Okay, so the inferior vena cava is partly guarded by the eustachian wall. Okay, now in the left atrium. So in the left atrium, it receives the oxygenated blood. Okay, see, right atrium is receiving the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so it is receiving the deoxygenated blood. So the left atrium is receiving the oxygenated blood from whom? From the lungs. Okay, through 4 pulmonary veins. Okay, so you should know, from the lungs the oxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary veins. So this pulmonary veins is delivering the blood delivering the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. So this is an important point. Now the two atrium are separated by the interatrial septum. Okay, two atrium in the sense right atrium and the left atrium, they are separated by the interatrial septum. Now in the fetus, this septum has a pore. In the fetus, the septum has a pore at the foramen ovale, which closes after birth, become fossa ovalis. Okay, so in the fetus stage, the septum in the sense interatrial septum. So this interatrial septum has a pore. That pore is nothing but a foramen ovale. Okay, foramen ovale, that is now closes. Okay, so it is opening during the fetus stage and it has been closed after it has been born. Okay, so now this foramen ovale becomes the fossa ovalis. Okay, so this becomes the fossa ovalis. Now ventricle, so in the right ventricle, so again we have studied about this right atrium and the left atrium. So this right atrium is receiving the deoxygenated blood, left atrium is receiving the oxygenated blood with the help of this pulmonary veins. Okay, now we are going to study about this ventricles. Now right ventricle, so they are pumping the deoxygenated blood into the pulmonary trunk, and this pulmonary trunk is nothing but a pulmonary artery. So the right atrium and the right ventricle, they are filled with the deoxygenated blood only. Okay, so the left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood into the aorta. So again, the left atrium and the left ventricle is filled with which type of blood? Oxygenated blood. So from the left ventricle, the blood has been entered into the aorta. Okay. Okay, so just remember all these things. Finally, I'll give you the flow chart. Okay, so the two ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum. So the two atrium is separated by the interatrial septum, and the two ventricles are separated by the interventricular septum. So the left ventricle has thicker muscular walls than the right. Okay, see, why it has to be thick? So that is the question. So the left ventricle has thicker muscular walls than the right ventricles. Both are ventricles, and this is a right side and this is the left side. So whenever the ventricles present in the left side, that is the left ventricle, they are having the thick walls when compared to the right side. Okay, so that is why, because to pump the blood into the systemic circulation. Systemic circulation means from the left ventricle the blood has to enter into all our system, all our parts of body. So that is what a systemic circulation. So that is why to pump that it has to be present with this thick muscular walls. Now the inner walls has the muscular ridges. So that the inner walls which is called which is having the ridges, muscular ridges, that is we are calling them as the trabeculae carneae. Okay, now the papillary muscles project from walls attached to the chordae tendineae which anchor walls cusps to prevent the backflow. See, papillary muscles, the walls, see we are having the muscular ridges in the walls, we are technically calling them as a trabeculae carneae. So now from that walls they are having the papillary muscles. Okay, so that is attached to the chordae tendineae. Why we are having this all these structures means to prevent the backflow of the blood. Okay, so to prevent the backflow of the blood, in the sense from the right atrium the blood has to enter into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle the blood has to taken by the pulmonary artery. Okay, so from the pulmonary artery it is going to the lungs. From the lungs the oxygenated blood is taken by the pulmonary veins to the right atrium. From the right atrium the blood has to left atrium. From the left atrium the blood has to enter into the left ventricle. Okay, so from the left ventricle it has to enter into the aorta. So this is what a flow of blood. Okay, so what if in case of the left ventricle, the blood which is present at the left ventricle, if it is enter into the right atrium, what is the case? So this is called as a backflow. So to prevent all the backflow of blood, we are having the walls. We are having all these structures. Okay. Now, what are all the walls in the heart? Okay. Right atrioventricular aperture. Right atrioventricular aperture in the sense right atrium and the right ventricular. Okay, so between these two we are having a three wall. We are calling this particular wall as a tricuspid walls. Okay, so to prevent the backflow of blood from the right ventricle to the right atrium, there is a presence of a wall which is called as a tricuspid wall. Immediately after the blood which is flow from the right atrium to the ventricle, immediately the right ventricle, the wall which is present here, that is tricuspid wall, will be closed, so that it can prevent the backflow of the blood from the right ventricle to the right atrium. Now, the left atrium and the left ventricle. Okay, so here it has been again, the blood which is present in the left ventricle will not go, shouldn't enter into the left atrium. So there is a wall which is called as a bicuspid wall. So this bicuspid wall is also called as a mitral wall. Now, opening of the pulmonary trunk, which means pulmonary trunk in the sense pulmonary artery. Okay, pulmonary artery. So here they are guarded by the pulmonary semilunar valve. See, from the right ventricle, the blood has been taken by the pulmonary artery. Okay, so from the pulmonary artery, the blood has to enter into the lungs. Okay, so as it has to enter into the lungs, it has to take the blood from the right ventricle to the lungs by the pulmonary artery. What if in case the blood which is present in the pulmonary artery, again it has flow into the right ventricle? So it shouldn't be happen. So that is why there is a presence of a wall which is called as a semilunar wall. Okay, now opening of aorta, it is also guarding by the aortic semilunar wall, which means from the right ventricle, from the left ventricle, the blood has to enter into the aorta with the help of which wall? So from the left ventricle, the blood has to enter into the aorta. Okay, so from the aorta the blood will not backflow into the left ventricle. Okay, so this backflow of blood has been prevented by the wall which is called as a semilunar wall. Right, now opening of the aorta. Okay, so this is guarded by the aortic semilunar wall. Now the walls ensures the unidirectional flow of blood. Now just make a note of it. Okay, from the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, so the blood has to enter into the right atrium. Okay, from the right atrium, the blood has to enter into the right ventricle, and the wall which is present here between these atrium and the ventricle in the right side, so that wall will be the tricuspid wall. Okay, so from the right ventricle, the blood has to enter into the lungs. Okay, with the pulmonary artery. See, through the help of this pulmonary artery, the blood has been taken from the right ventricle to the lungs. Okay, so the wall which is present here to prevent the backflow of blood from the pulmonary artery again to the right ventricle, here will be the semilunar wall. Okay, semilunar wall. Now from the lungs, with the help of the pulmonary veins, the blood has been entered into the left atrium. Okay, now from the left atrium, the blood has to enter into the left ventricle, and the wall which is present between these two to prevent the backflow from the ventricle to the atrium, that is called as a bicuspid wall. Okay, now from the left ventricle, the blood has to enter into the aorta. Okay, so aorta, here the blood which is present in the aorta, it shouldn't enter into the left ventricle, again it will be guarded by the semilunar wall, right? Now the aorta, from the aorta, all the cells will have the blood, oxygenated blood, alright, fine. So the blood is the one carrying all the nutrients, oxygen, everything. Okay, so now this is what a condition. And one more important thing will be the up to the pulmonary artery, it is taking the blood to the lungs, all these are having the deoxygenated blood. Okay, so from the pulmonary veins to the cells, everybody will taking the oxygenated blood. So this is an important thing, just keep a note of it, right? Fine. Now nodal tissue. Okay, so this is what a conduction of the heart, and we are having a nodal tissue. And what is the function of this nodal tissue? So this is nothing but a conduction system. Okay, they are conducting a impulse. Okay, so who is creating an impulse and where it is exactly present and what is their exact function? Okay, so heart has a specialized muscle tissue which generates and conducts the impulses. We know that. Okay, so heart has a specialized muscle tissue that generates and conducts the impulse. See here, there is a two important words. They are generating an impulse. They are not only generating, but it is also a conducting. Okay, it is also involving in the conduction process besides the generation. Now the first one will be the sinoatrial node, that is SA node. Okay, so this is present in the upper atrium. This is called as a natural pacemaker. Right, now atrioventricular node, that is AV node, which is present in the lower atrium. This is near coronary sinus. Right, see, you should know this, both SA node and AV node present in the right atrium. Only thing, SA node will be in the upper right atrium and the AV node will be in the lower right atrium. Now the natural pacemaker is called as the SA node. Okay, so this is the one creating the impulse first. Okay, now the bundle of His, that is AV bundle, this bundle is arising from the AV node. This is one runs through the interventricular septum. Okay, so interventricular septum means what? Interventricular septum means between these two ventricles, right ventricle and the left ventricle. Now the right and left bundle branches spreads into the ventricle. So all these bundles will be bundles, they are getting branched and it has been spread into the entire ventricles. Now Purkinje fibers or Purkinje fibers. So this is the terminal branches spread through the ventricle walls. Okay, so the impulse, it is reaching the ventricular walls with the help of which fibers? Purkinje fibers. Okay, so this is what a conduction system. So this system ensures the rhythmic and coordinated contractions of atrium and the ventricles. See, so after The pumping action of the heart involves the two important phases, that is contraction and relaxation. Okay, so if the right atrium, if the atrium is getting contracted and the ventricle has to relax, if the ventricle getting contracted, the atrium has to relax. Okay, so this rhythmic contraction and coordination will all be done by this nodal tissue, that is SA node, AV node, bundle of His and Purkinje fibers. Okay, so all these are considered as a conduction system. Now, aortic arches. What is mean by this aortic arches? There is pulmonary arch. Okay, pulmonary arch arises. See, there is a pulmonary arch and the systemic arch. Okay, so we are calling this pulmonary arch and the systemic arch as the aortic arches. Okay, so the pulmonary arches means pulmonary in the sense it is related to lungs. Okay, systemic means it is involving in the systems, in all parts or cells. Okay, so all systems like respiratory system, circulatory system, nervous system. Okay, so all the physiological functions, so all the systems. Okay, so that is what a systemic arch. So now the same thing. Okay, so there is a pulmonary wall. Okay, from the right ventricle. Okay, from the right ventricle the blood has to reach the lungs. Okay, so with the help of this pulmonary artery. So this is what a pulmonary wall. Okay, it carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. So this is what the function of the pulmonary arch. Now what about the systemic arch? With the help of the, from the left ventricle the blood has to enter into the aorta. So that is what it was guarded by this aortic valve. Okay, so what is their function? They are carrying the oxygenated blood to the different parts of the body via its branches. Right, so this is what the function of this pulmonary arch and the systemic arch. Right. Now, valves are pulmonary and the aortic arches. So, what are all the valves which is present in the pulmonary and the aortic arches? See, both are the semilunar valves. So, what we have discussed before, from the right ventricle, the blood is taken to the lungs with the help of the pulmonary artery, and the blood from the pulmonary artery, it shouldn't be backflow from the pulmonary artery to the right ventricle. So, this backflow of blood is prevented by a valve which is called as a semilunar valve. Again, so from the left ventricle to the aorta, okay, so the blood has to enter into the aorta so that it reach to the other physiological systems. So blood from the aorta, you should not enter into the left ventricle again. Okay, so this again it will be prevented by the valve which is called as a semilunar valves. Okay. So this semilunar valves consisting of 3 semilunar flaps. Okay, so first one will be the ligamental arteriosum. Okay, so ligamentum arteriosum, a fibrous strand present at the junction of the systemic and the pulmonary arches. So we have studied the systemic arches and the pulmonary arches. At this junction there is a strand made of fiber. The fibrous strand is present, so that is called as a ligamentum arteriosum. What is their origin? Remnant of the ductus arteriosus. Okay, so from the ductus arteriosus, so during the fetus development the structure is called as a ductus arteriosus. Whenever it has been the baby is newborn, it has been developed into ligamentum arteriosum. Okay, so what is the function of this ductus arteriosus in the embryo? What is their function? So this is the one connecting the systemic and the pulmonary arches. Okay, so this is the one connecting both the systemic and the pulmonary arches. Okay, so this is the first question. So we have discussed this, a structure of heart of man with the help of the NEET diagram. Okay, so kindly diagram is very important, and if possible write a flow chart of it. Okay, so I have explained you, right? Superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, from these two the blood has to be entered into the right atrium, from the right atrium right ventricle, from the right ventricle the blood has been taken by the pulmonary artery to the lungs, from the lungs with the help of pulmonary vein it has been entered into the left atrium, from the left atrium it will be entered into the left ventricle, from the left ventricle it has been entered into the aorta. And what are the valves which is present between this right atrium and the right ventricle will be the tricuspid valve. And from the right ventricle to the pulmonary atrium, that is what a semilunar valve. Okay, from the lungs to the pulmonary pulmonary veins, and pulmonary veins is taking the blood to the right atrium, and between this right atrium and the left ventricle there is a presence of the wall which is called as the bicuspid wall or the mitral wall. From the left ventricle, the blood has to enter into the aorta again with a wall which is called as a semilunar wall. And one more important thing will be the up to the pulmonary artery, it will be the deoxygenated blood. From the left atrium and the left ventricle aorta will be the oxygenated blood. Okay. So, and one more important point. So, we are going to see about that. Okay. Now, working of the heart of man. Okay, so write notes on the working of the heart of man. Okay, so cardiac cycle, how the heart is working, what is the working principle of the heart. Okay, so that we are calling that particular cycle as a cardiac cycle. See, cardiac cycle in the sense, one cardiac cycle includes all these functions. See, from the superior vena cava, this thing, from the superior vena cava to the aorta, this is called as a one cardiac cycle. Okay. Now, see this cardiac cycle, so all these functions, see, I have explained you from the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, blood will be entered into the right atrium, right ventricle, and all these things happening up to the aorta. What will be the duration? This is called as a one cardiac cycle, and one cardiac cycle, what will be the duration? It will be approximately 0.8 seconds. Okay, within not even a second, not even in 1 second, it will be in 0.8 seconds. Okay, in 0.8 seconds one cardiac cycle has been completed. Okay, so one cardiac cycle 0.8 seconds. Now, so in 1 minute, 72 times per minute. Okay, so per minute approximately it will be 72 times. Okay, so the cardiac cycle is the sequence of events from the beginning of one heartbeat to the next. Okay, so just to see, we are going to see what will be the heartbeat. What will be the heartbeat? Generally it will be lub and dub. Okay, so how these sounds are producing? Because of the closing of the walls. Okay, we are having tricuspid, we have studied about all the walls. Just by closing on the opening of the walls, they are creating a sound, and that is called as a lub and dub. Okay, we are going to see about that. So conduction system, human conduction system, we have studied about that. Sinoatrial node, atrioventricular node, bundle of his Purkinje fibers. You know that? So the sinoatrial node is called as a natural pacemaker. Okay, and it is myogenic. Okay, see, so natural pacemaker in the sense, though this is the one creating an impulse, isn't it? So this is the one creating an impulse. So that is why it is called as a natural pacemaker. And human heart will be myogenic. So generally there are two types of heart. One is neurogenic and the myogenic. If the neurons is taking the control of the heart, pumping action of the heart, it is called as a neurogenic. If the working principle of the heart is depending on controlled by the brain, it is called as a neurogenic. If it is controlled by the muscles, it is called as a myogenic. We know that the cardiac cycle, 1 minute. We know that in human heart, the muscles, human heart, it will be under the control of the cardiac muscle. The pumping action of the heart is under the control of the muscle, which is called as a cardiac muscle, and we are calling them as the myogenic heart. Okay. Now, so it generates an impulse for every 0.6 seconds. So every 0.6 seconds they are generating an impulse, which is called as a sinoatrial node. Okay. Now after that, atrioventricular node. So it relays station conduct the impulse from the atrium to the ventricle. So sinoatrial node is also creating. So you should know that not only this SA node is creating an impulse, this AV node is also generating an impulse. Okay. It is also conducting the impulse from the atrium to the ventricles. Bundle of His, again it is conducting the impulse through the interventricular septum. Now Purkinje fibers, it is the terminal branches spread the impulse throughout the ventricular walls. Okay, so it ensures the coordinated and rhythmic contraction of this atrial ventricles. All these things we have discussed in the last question itself. Now, what are all the phases of the cardiac cycle? Okay, so the phases of the cardiac cycle. The first phase will be the joint diastole. Okay, so phases of the cardiac cycle, we are having the systole and diastole. Okay, two important words, that is systole and diastole. Okay, so this systole is nothing but a contraction. Okay, the systole is a contraction and this diastole is a relaxation. Systole is a contraction and diastole is relaxation. Okay, so see, so joint diastole, we are having atrial systole, atrial diastole, ventricular systole and ventricular diastole, and this concept is little bit different, that is joint diastole. We know that diastole means relaxation, joint means both atrium and the ventricle both are in the relaxed state, which means what, all the four chambers of the heart are in a relaxed state. So you should know all the four chambers of the heart are in a relaxed state for the duration of 0.4 seconds. Alright, blood from the pulmonary veins and the vena cava flows into the atria. Okay, so blood from the pulmonary veins and the vena cava. Yeah, so pulmonary veins and the vena cava flows into the atrium. Okay, so you should understand this properly. See, this is a right atrium, so this is a left atrium, and this is a right ventricle, and this is the left ventricle. Don't get confused with this. See, so who is the donor of blood to the right atrium? Here it will be done by the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. They are the one filling the blood in the right atrium. Who is responsible for filling the blood in the left atrium? Who is responsible? Pulmonary veins is the one responsible for filling the blood in the right atrium. So you should not think that only after right atrium the blood will be entered into right ventricle and it will be taken by the pulmonary artery to the lungs, and from the pulmonary vein it will be reaching the left atrium, from the left atrium to the left ventricle. You should not think like that in a sequential manner. So both the atrium filling the blood was filled with the blood at the same time, simultaneously. Okay, so both the atrium are in a contraction phase at the same time. Okay, so that is what explained here. Blood from the pulmonary veins and the vena cava will be flows into the atrium. So this is the meaning of it. Now, the atrioventricular valves, mitral and the tricuspid, are open, allowing the blood to flow into the ventricle. The atrioventricular valves means what? Atrioventricular valves, we have studied the atrium and the ventricles is getting separated with the help of the valves, tricuspid and the bicuspid valve. Okay, so atrioventricles valves here open, allowing the blood to flow into the ventricles. Okay, see here, at the time of, so you should know, at the time of joint diastole we are having four chambers, and all the four chambers are in a relaxed state for the duration of 0.4 seconds. The second thing will be this, the mitral valve, the bicuspid and the tricuspid valve, which is present between the right and left atrium, right and the right atrium and the ventricle, left atrium and the ventricle. Okay, so these valves are also open. Now, if the valves are open, the blood from the atrium, it has been flowed to the ventricles. This is the scenario. Now, which valves are closed here? Semilunar valves are closed. Semilunar valves prevents the backflow of blood from the pulmonary artery to the right ventricle and from the aorta to the left ventricle. Okay, so that valves are closed. Now, so that is a condition in case of joint diastole. The second condition will be the atrial systole. Okay, so this atrial systole is the duration of this atrial systole will be 0.1 seconds. Okay, 0.1 seconds. So this is initiated by the sinoatrial node action potential. Okay, so the impulse created by the sinoatrial node. Okay, the impulse has been created by the sinoatrial node. This results in the atrial systole, which means the right and left atrium is going to get contract. Okay, so the contraction is called as an atrial systole. So this contraction was initiated by the sinoatrial node, and this contraction of this atria will be the duration of this contraction will be 0.1 seconds. Now, both the atria contract simultaneously, right? Now, about 30% of the blood flows into the ventricles due to the atrial contraction. See, as a result of this atrial contraction, 30% of the blood has been flowed to the ventricles. Okay, and remaining 70% enters before the atrial systole. See, due to the atrial contraction, the 30% of the blood which is present in the right atrium and the left atrium will be flowed to the ventricles, and remaining 70% enters before the atrial systole. Now, ventricular systole. See, the ventricular contraction, the duration of the ventricular contraction will be the 0.3 seconds. Now, the action potential travels from the sinoatrial node to the atrioventricular node, then through the bundle of His and Purkinje fibers to the ventricles, which means what? All the nodes are helping, and now as a result of this SA node impulse, action potential generated by this SA node, atrial systole has happened. Now, the impulse created by this SA node has to travel. Now it has been traveled to AV node, from the AV node to the bundle of His and to the Purkinje fibers. Okay. So now the ventricle contract. At the time of contraction of this ventricle, the atrium is going to relax. Okay. So at the time of atrial contraction, the ventricle is getting relaxed. Okay. Now, AV node close, AV valves, that is our atrioventricular valves, which means what? The tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve. So, just imagine now the right atrium and the left atrium, okay? So, the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So, the valves present between here. Now, this atrial systole contracted. So, as it is a contract, this valve is open. So all the blood which is present in the right atrium enter into the right ventricle, and from the left atrium to the left ventricle. Okay. Now, so as it is in a, now it is the turn of the ventricles. It has to contract. So that is what a ventricular systole. Okay. Now the ventricles contract. At the time of the contraction of the ventricles, the atrium has to relax. Okay, so as it is in a relaxed state, it has to contract. Now when the ventricles start contracting, the blood has to enter into the pulmonary artery. Okay, and from, if it is a left ventricle, it has been enter into aorta. Okay, so if it is contract, if the valves is not present, the blood will be present in the right ventricle. As it is contracting, it will be enter into the right atrium itself. So that is why, to prevent this backflow, the tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve is getting closed. So as a result of this closure of these two valves, they are creating a sound that is considered as a first heart sound, which is called as a love. Right? Now, increased ventricular pressure opens the semilunar valves, allowing the blood to enter into the aorta and the artery. So at the time of this, just listen here. So at the time of this joint diastole, all the valves are closed, which means the semilunar valves are closed and AV valves are open. Okay, so at the time of this ventricular systole, the aorta, the semilunar valves are open. Okay, the semilunar valves are open. Why? Because the blood has to enter into the pulmonary artery. Okay, now. See, now immediately after the ventricular systole, again the stage will be, the phase will be the joint diastole. Again it will be 0.4 seconds. That is repeated. Okay. So ventricles relax. Now the ventricles is relaxing. Semilunar valves closed. Why? Because now immediately after the ventricular contraction, the blood now it will be present in the pulmonary artery and the aorta. If the semilunar valves are open, the blood which is present in the pulmonary artery will be entered into the right ventricle, and from the aorta it will be entered into the left ventricle once again. Okay, so it is a backflow. So if it is closed, it can prevent the backflow. Now, as a result of this closing of the semilunar walls, it is creating the second heart sound that is called as a dove. Right? Now, AV valves are open. Okay, so now AV valves are open, allowing the blood to flow freely from the atrium into the ventricles. Right? See, so the AV valves in the sense what? Tricuspid and bicuspid valves. So at the time of joint stool, tricuspid and the bicuspid valves are open and the semilunar valves are closed. Okay. Just remember with this. Now all the chambers are relaxed and ready for the next cardiac cycle. So that's all about the one cardiac cycle. So you should know it has been start with the joint diastole, atrial systole, a ventricular systole and the joint diastole. Now what will be the cardiac output? So we have studied about one cardiac cycle. Okay, so now what is the cardiac output? The stroke volume is a volume of, so we are having the cardiac output is equal to stroke volume. Okay, we are going to multiply this with the heart rate. Okay, stroke volume. So what is meant by stroke volume? See, stroke volume is the volume of the blood pumped by each ventricle per heartbeat. Okay, we are having 72 beats per minute. Okay, per minute we are having how many beats? 72 beats. Right. So per beat. Okay, now per beat we are having the ventricle is pumping the blood. Okay, for each beat they are pumping the ventricle. So whenever the blood is pumped by each ventricle per heartbeat, so that is called as a stroke volume. So that is what a stroke volume. Okay, so you should know that stroke volume is nothing but for each heartbeat the blood which is pumped by the ventricle. So that's what a stroke volume. Now the cardiac output is a volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Okay, see, per minute. Per minute means 60 seconds. Okay, per minute 60 seconds. So in that 60 seconds, the cardiac output means a volume of blood pumped by each ventricle, which means 72 beats. Okay, see what do we have discussed? So cardiac output. So stroke volume. So stroke volume here what do we have discussed? Per heartbeat. See, for 1 minute we are having 72 beats. Okay, 72 beats we are taking only one beat. Okay, in one beat how much ml of blood is pumped by the ventricle? So that is what a stroke volume, and that is nothing but a 70 ml. Okay, so cardiac output means what? Volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute. Okay, how many beat now? So this is what a, so 72 beats. Clear? Okay, now see here. See, this is what per minute how many beats? Per minute how many beats? 72 beats. Okay, so in that 72 beats we are taking one beat. Okay, so in one beat how many ml of blood is getting pumped by the ventricle? So that is stroke volume, that is 70. Okay, now so we are multiplying all these things. Okay, so 5040 ml of blood. So this is what a cardiac output. So this is in ml. Okay, so this is in ml. So we are dividing this 5040 divided by 1000. Okay, so the point will be here. So it will be approximately 5 liters. So that is why always we are saying here in human body there is a 5 liters of blood. So 5 liters of blood is nothing but a cardiac output. Okay, so cardiac output increases during the activity and decreases during the rest time. So whenever we are in the rest time, it will be the cardiac output will be decreased. Whenever we are working a lot, okay, whenever we are working, our cardiac output will be increased. Okay, so this is what a scenario. So this is what a double circulation of the heart. So what is double circulation? Okay, so double circulation means, see, whenever we are speaking about this one cardiac cycle, the heart is involved twice. Okay, have you noticed that? See, so from the superior inferior vena cava, the blood will be entered into the right atrium, and from the right atrium it will be entered into the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle it will be entered into the lungs. Okay, now the another cycle. From the lungs it will be enter into the right left atrium, and from the left to left ventricle, and from the left ventricle to the aorta. So here, see, it is reaching the lungs. Okay, so here the involvement of heart is here, and here also the involvement of heart. Okay, so if the lungs is involved, this is called as a pulmonary circulation. If there is an aorta, it is reaching other cells, so this is called as a systemic circulation. So this is what? A double circulation, pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. See, from the pulmonary veins, the same thing. So okay, so all these things will be the pulmonary circulation, all these things will be the systemic circulation. So this is, as two circulation are involving, we are calling this circulation as a double circulation. Okay, so pulmonary circulation, so this is what? A lesser circulation. Why? The right ventricle pumps the deoxygenated blood into the pulmonary artery, we know that, and it is reaching the lungs to get an oxygen. Okay, so for oxygenation, so this is a pulmonary circulation. Now oxygenated blood returns to the left atrium via the pulmonary veins, we know that, and this is called as a systemic circulation. So the systemic circulation is what? A greater circulation. Why? Because it is reaching all other tissues, okay, in our entire body. So this is what? A greater circulation, because every cell needs an oxygenated blood, not a deoxygenated blood. Okay, now left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood into the aorta. Blood delivers the oxygen and nutrients to all the tissues, and deoxygenated blood returns to the right atrium once again through veins and vena cava. So this is what? The entire circulation is taking place. Now another important words will be the portal circulation and coronary circulation. Portal circulation means blood vessel that starts and ends in capillaries is called as a portal vessel. Okay, so the blood vessel start in a capillaries and end with the capillaries. So that is what? A portal vessel. And we are having an important portal system that is called as a hepatic portal system, which means they are connecting the digestive tract to the liver. Okay, so that is what? An hepatic portal system. So the blood has to reach to the liver through which portal system? Hepatic portal system. Okay, so the absorbed nutrients such as sugars are converted into the glycogen in the liver. So this process is called as a glycogenesis. So you should know portal circulation means if it is in the, if the blood vessels starts and ends with the capillaries, we are calling that as a portal vessel. So we are having one portal system, that is hepatic portal system, which means the blood is reaching the liver. Okay, now coronary circulation. Coronary circulation in the sense if the blood supply to the heart muscles, that is called as a coronary circulation. We are having two important coronary arteries, right and left coronary artery supplies the oxygenated blood. So this is important. Okay, so coronary veins drains the deoxygenated blood into the coronary sinus. So you should know that we are having coronary artery, they are supplying the oxygenated blood. We are having coronary veins, they are supplying the deoxygenated blood to what? To coronary sinus, right? So this is an important thing. Okay, so another major important thing will be, so we have studied this pulmonary artery is carrying the deoxygenated blood and the pulmonary veins is carrying the oxygenated blood. Okay, so but you should know that generally arteries are carrying the oxygenated blood and veins are the one responsible for carrying the deoxygenated blood, but only with the exception of this pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein and umbilical artery and umbilical vein. So these are all the exceptions which is in case of artery it is carrying the deoxygenated blood, if it is a vein it is carrying the oxygenated blood, but generally artery is responsible for the oxygenated blood carry and the veins is responsible for carrying of this deoxygenated blood. Okay, so but the exception will be these pulmonary artery and umbilical artery, pulmonary vein and the umbilical vein. Okay, so in today's class we have completed the second year long answer question with respect to this body fluids and circulation. In tomorrow class we are going to discuss about the long answer questions and the upcoming chapter. Okay, thank you so much.